Hey, what's going on? Yesterday I put up a video about construction of a Sword of Grayskull. I think I called it the Sword of Eternia. It's weird in the movie. They refer to it as the Sword of Grayskull. It's often known as the Sword of Power, but, you know, the mythos wasn't really following the cartoon. It was more so the comics and Mattel and the license. It's a whole big thing. There's a documentary on it. Watch it if you want. So basically, what we did was we went from a template that we printed. We went from a store-bought sword, specifically this one, the Royal Sword from Spirit of Halloween. We sculpted the hilt in a 1-to-1 scale out of foam clay. I then made a mold and impressed a second side, and I had two because I was actually able to salvage the positive from the mold. You can sculpt both sides either way you want to do it, or you can run them in resin and try to come up with a completely new way to do it. You can see this one's in the process of being sanded in case I ever want to do a really high-end one. That's my positive to remold. And in the end, what we ended up with is this. So, this right here, actually, how does He-Man do it? He does it this way, and he goes, "I have the power, you fuckers." Yes, I love that so much. So this is a $16 sword from Spirit of Halloween. With a little bit of foam clay and a little bit of prep work, you can actually get a very passable Sword of Eternia, or Sword of Power, or Sword of Grayskull, or whatever the hell you want to call it. It's He-Man's sword. The blade isn't as thick as I would like. The overall length isn't quite as long as I would like. But at first glance, if this was hanging on me dressed as Skeletor, you would recognize it immediately. You'd know exactly what it is. You're like, oh, that's what that is. Now, if you really get in close, there's a lot of imperfections. It looks okay. But again, this is foam clay. This is not going to look perfect. It's not going to be like those ones that you see at the RPF that are very expensive, made out of wood and everything, that look gorgeous. If you're looking for like a high-end display one, there's a really good one on Etsy. It's like $257 or something like that. Gorgeous thing. Says it's made out of wood. The guy has some cosplay photos up too. Looks like he did something similar to this for the cosplay. And then the one he's selling is a much better looking one. I highly recommend, if that's what you really want to do, pick this up. There are also some files on Thingiverse. You could just print this and 3D print it. I don't have a 3D printer, so I kind of had to use what I got. I had to go old school. But what's really cool is foam clay has really given cosplayers a really good alternative if you just suck with real clay or you're not a sculpey guy like me. This air dry foam clay that you can pick up at Michael's, Joann's, and Hobby Lobby in various formats, white, black, etc., really opens up some interesting opportunity to make yourself some nice, easy props. So I did this paint job in about 2 days. What I did was I taped off the sword, I plastidipped it in 2 coats, then I went over it with gold rub and buff, both ends. As I mentioned, I kept the hilt. And then I touched it up with Tester's gold. The specific testers that I like to do that matches antique gold, not antique gold, modern gold rub and buff is, I don't even know which one this is called, actually. Well, where's the camera? There's the barcode on the actual tester's gold that I use. But it matches very beautifully the rub and buff that I use, so it's the same color, which I thought is phenomenal. So it allowed me to go in and do that. Then what I did was I took some basic Kiwi shoe polish, I cracked the top off as usual, put it into a little cup, and then I started painting over the gold finish and a bit of the blade with some black. I may go in and do a few more coats of that just to make it look a little nicer. If you don't like what you did, you can go in and use your finger and kind of touch it up a little bit. Some glue and crap in there, but just to get it a little more dirty. But you just want to take that like pristine look off it. Because mine's very rickety, I didn't want it to have a pristine paint job. I wanted it to look like the sword had been unclaimed for a long time and Skeletor got his hands on it. I kind of feel like on some level with the Masters of the Universe of the 1987 film, Keldor got the sword originally and the sorceress had to get it back from him, and in that struggle he became injured, and then you can kind of do the 2000X thing where Hordak grants him his life back in exchange for his face because he's a vain piece of shit and he thinks he's so gorgeous, and then he takes his face away from him, and that's the price for continued life. And he blames He-Man and Grayskull and everybody for that, and he's very embarrassed, and that's why he's socially so awful. And so his quest was not only to regain the Sword of Power, or the Sword of Eternity, or the Sword of Grayskull, and regain Grayskull itself, but gain those powers that turned him into a god, because he was hoping to get his face back, and then he could be the beautiful person he always thought he was. But lo and behold, it turned him into a different form of god, a sort of different kind of power, because in the end, he didn't care what everybody else thought. He didn't care about anybody's equals. He thought he was above everybody. He said, screw it, I'm Skeletor, God Skeletor. And that's why his crown was a replica of Grayskull and everything in the movie. So in my brain, that's how I made the reference from Keldor to Skeletor, and why he looked the way he did at the end, why he didn't get his face back. And, you know, I always loved what they did with Keldor and that whole storyline. I thought that was really cool. We never really knew why Skeletor in the cartoon was the way he was, and it wasn't meant to tell us, because that's not what the cartoon was about. But Sword of Grayskull, very easy to do, very easy build, looks really nice. Again, I know the grip and the pommel are not identical, but it does seem to kind of go. It works. And this will just be a display next to my mannequin. I'm building the locking mechanism that'll hold it, so it'll just display next to the mannequin with my Skeletor costume. And when I wear it, instead of having Skeletor's sword, I'll have the Sword of Eternia, so that I can, you know, use the line and say, the sword of, you know, the Sword of Eternia, mine forever. I think he calls it the Sword of Grayskull. I have to double check on that. I like the Sword of Eternia. It sounds cooler, but technically it's supposed to be tied to the power of Grayskull, so I guess it's called the Sword of Grayskull in this show, in the movie. But we'll see what the movie does with it, what they call it specifically. They may just call it the Sword of Power. I don't know. But you know me, I'm into anything, anything with a magic sword as the center of the character. I'm all about it. So this is my Sword of Grayskull. I'm very, very happy with it. Down the line, like I said, I'm cleaning up that positive. My goal is to... This is a fan-made one that I used as a template, but there's a lot more smoothness and detail to that. I would very much like to replicate that at some point. So I'm sanding this guy down to really kind of get as much of that smoothness as I can. It's going to be a very long process. I'm doing it in spare time while I make Necronomicons and things like that. But I have another sword coming in. Now, I have not forgotten about the INIGO Montoya sword. We are still going to repaint that and make that look sexy and awesome. So don't worry if you've been waiting on the INIGO Montoya. That's going to happen. But I also have, while I was doing research to find more stuff on the Sword of Grayskull, I found a very, very, very economic foam knockoff of the Sword of Omens in full size. I prefer the small size. I think that's much cooler. That's what I want a high-end replica of one day, with the cat's eye instead of the entire Thundercat cat when it's fully extended, because that's only battle ready. I kind of like the transportation small dagger version. But it's very cool. It has the shape and all the details are there. It needs a whole new paint job. The Eye of Thundera does not have the proper Thundercats logo in it, so I'm gonna have to be adding that myself and creating a lens for it. Odin Makes did one not too long ago, which I thought was really cool. I'm gonna be doing a version of that. So I will be repainting that as well and adding it to my collection of 80s magic swords. One day I have to get a hold of Excalibur from the 1984 film, because God, I love that movie. But yeah, I love anything with a magic sword, so this is definitely a magic sword. I have a couple foam master swords, which I also like. Actually, I can compare this to a master sword really quick. I have two. So, this is a 42-inch, I believe, master sword, which I have repainted with some pearlized rubbin buffs. It's a nice, big, thick blade. This, if it was a straight blade, this would have made a really good Sword of Eternia blade, but it doesn't have the fuller. And so if we compare these two swords side by side-ish, you can see they're pretty close in length. So this one's a little bigger, but it's about that same size. But that thicker blade, I would have really loved to have had that as my blade. Just wasn't gonna work with the little extra hitch in it. Even if I built the cross guard all the way up to this, it just wasn't gonna fly. Because even if I pulled this, and I even looked at it, if I pulled this all the way up here, it just wasn't gonna work with the rest of the sword. So there was really no point in using that blade. But that's one of them. I also have the Sword of INIGO Montoya, which is the six-fingered man sword. This needs a drastic paint job in the worst way. It just has no luster whatsoever. So the blade, the hilt, the handle needs to have some gold filigree in it, and it needs to be white. So that needs to get added as well. As you can see, again, size-wise, this is a pretty good sized toy. I think this is like 20 or 30 bucks on HalloweenCostumes.com. They are back in stock, so if you didn't get one last year, get one this year. Very, very cool. They also have a pretty good INIGO MONTOYA costume. And the last one I'm working on, which was a blade I thought about using, this is the blade for my Legend of the Seeker, which I worked with in conjunction with Ultra Effects Studios. I will be offering these, so this is the Sword of Truth. I'll get out of the way so you can see a little bit more of what's going on detail-wise. But this is the Sword of Truth from the show, but I will be adding truth on the hilt to match the book, because I decided to do a little bit of my own combination of it. So I will be adding the runes on the blade, but this guy is full resin, and so there will be a dowel through this, and this is ready to go. But I do have molds for this. I do have the ability to replicate this, so if some of you guys are Seeker fans like I was, or you're a fan of the Sword of Truth series, we can replicate this for you. But the blade, you're going to have to get from any, like a Spirit of Halloween, or I got this one from Party City. I've shown the sword many times. I'll be stocking up and getting like 5 or 6 of these this Halloween for future sword projects, because I really like the blade on this. It's a shorter blade, so it's like a single-handed blade, but I made the pommel a hand and a half, so the entire grip is a little bigger. But this is what it was in a 1-to-1 scale. I made mine just a wee bit bigger because I wanted to put 2 hands on this comfortably, and the guy who plays Richard Cypher is a tiny little man, and I am not. So I'm a big fat fatty, and I need way more grip room. So I made this longer, and Ultra Effects Studios was really good about working through the mod and everything with me with that. So yeah, so we've got a lot of swords, and swords are my thing, but I'm all about these con-safe ones. I don't want to collect all the metal ones. I do have a few. I have the Sword of Duncan MacLeod, which is a metal one. That's a pretty good replica. There's a lot floating around, but I wanted one that was directly from the molds from the show, and well, at least from season 3 on. And I do have one that was molded from the molds I used for season 3 on. Season 1 was a completely different mold. So I do have a metal one of that. I have a couple other real swords hanging around here that I just like. What's this guy? Like, I just have this, which is just, I don't even remember why I have this, but I never saw a sword that looked so cool without a crossguard. So I just picked this up almost a decade ago, and I've just had it because it's just very cool, has a nice balance to it. So swords have always been my thing for fun, but when it comes to making swords, I've never been very good at it, but this foam clay has allowed me to do that. So this is the final version, and if you look at where the seams are and how I connected the 2 pieces together, it's rough. And I did sand it afterwards. The foam clay does respond to sanding. But for me, because it wasn't going to be completely accurate, I just got it to a good enough point. That's what I do. I do good enough for me. You know, everybody gets really hung up on the perfection, and it has to be perfect, And look, if you got a 3D printer, then great, it'll be perfect. But if you don't, you work with what you got. And so the sword cost me 16 bucks. The rest of the supplies I had in my house. So for $16, I now have a Sword of Grayskull that does not exist. You know, and like I said, it's been called a bunch of stuff online. The Sword of Eternia, the Sword of Power, the He-Man Power Sword, the Sword of Grayskull, the Split Sword, I've seen it, because in the original comic there were 2 halves. Skeletor had one, He-Man had the other. So the Key Sword, I've seen it referred to as in Mexico, in Brazil, I forget, but they called it the Key Sword in the comic down there because the sword was the key to the entrance of Grayskull, the 2 halves. So I've seen it referred to as the Key Sword. I genuinely don't know what the canon name for it, I hate that word, what the canon name for it is, but I do know that as far as the 1987 film is concerned, they refer to it as the Sword of Grayskull. So that's what I call this version of it, because that's what I replicated. I very, very much like how it came out. I'm looking forward to putting it in the locking mechanism and having it display, but it'll look very nice next to my Skeletor. Just looking at some of it over there. So, if you watched the previous video, you saw a little bit of how I attached this hilt to the other piece. It wasn't an in-build video. I don't film myself building the thing like Odin Makes does, for example. I show you the step-by-step, I show you what's there, and then you gotta connect the dots yourself. If you wanna learn how to really do this stuff, watch the other videos that I watched. I'm not reinventing the wheel here. But I am very happy with the final result. This will work for what I want, and I absolutely love it. If I ever do upgrade and make a really nice resin hilt one with a better, thicker blade, maybe I'll sell this one. Maybe I'll give it to somebody. I don't know. But for now, this satiates my need for something from the 1987 film, since I am not yet done with my Skeletor. I have been casting the bits out of foam clay that go on Skeletor's tabard, or at least the first 12 on each side, and then a few times they appear on this. I have to sculpt. So of this, I have to sculpt this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and I have to cast about 50 of that one. So once I've done that, and this is 1-to-1 scale, I've got to make the rest of these, cast them, produce them, then attach them to soft parts. So Skeletor's a long way away. I did all the big, easy stuff first. Easy in the sense that, you know, you see it and it's like, oh, that's Skeletor. The little detail stuff is going to take me 3 times as long as the whole costume took me. So that's why I was very disheartened. I was like, I'm never going to finish this. So I decided to do a sword because I was like, oh, I can finish that. So once Spirit of Halloween opened, I just ran right in. I was like, give me a sword, please. I need to make something. And so it's really nice if you're doing a long project. I was talking to my friend Ryan about this, and my friend Kurt. If you have a long project, sometimes it's nice to tackle an aspect of it that you can just start and finish, and then you're done, and you have a done prop, because it's very satisfying to finish and then be like, okay, I did it, I finished. And then you could go back to your ongoing project. So that's the other reason I'm wrapping up my Necronomicon order this weekend for this month. As you guys know, the Necro orders are filled all the way through mid-2021. But it's not going to stop there. I will be doing a vid Necros on order only through the Knights of Samaria Facebook page. So you must reach out to me on the Knights of Samaria Facebook page. You must reach out to me. You can reach out to me on Instagram as well at AJB3Art. You can also go to theknightsofsamaria.com, join the forum, comment on that forum thread. Right now, I'm checking the forum like once a month until I'm ready to really dive in and document my Power Glove and everything. And then I'll predominantly be on that forum every couple of days. So that'll be a good place to find me, because as I start to leave the Knights of Samaria Facebook page to the other admins and moderators, I'm going to spend more time on that website and make it the resource that I want it to be for Evil Dead fans, for everybody who doesn't have Facebook. A lot of people are leaving Facebook over recent Facebook issues, and I understand that. So I am very, very content to live on a forum and just hang out there. So you will be able to find me. I'll be posting some pictures of this on my Instagram. Like I said, this is all foam clay modded onto an existing foam sword, so it makes your life a lot easier. We kept the pommel of theirs because I think it looks kind of cool. It's not accurate, but if the whole thing isn't going to be accurate, then why the hell am I going to stress over that? So I just needed something that had that really nice cross guard, and you knew it right away when you saw it. I have it. I'm happy. It was a $16 investment, and I used up a little bit of foam clay, but I still have a ton left. We live in a great time to build. You know, we got Adam Savage one-day builds. We got Odin Makes. We got all these great video guys on YouTube who show you the way, and then you just got to tackle it. So technology is there to help us. If you have 3D printing, even better. I one day may want to make Skeletor's sword just to complete his costume, even though he only has it at the very, very end, and he never wore it on his person in the entire costume, so it's not officially part of the costume in that sense. But it might be cool, so I could potentially tackle it the exact same way I tackled this. It's just a question of whether or not I want to do it. I haven't decided, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you attempt to make your own if you enjoyed that film as much as I did. And, you know, like I said, builders build. So keep building, enjoy your final products, and I'll see you on the next video. Hopefully we will be doing one on some Star Wars stuff.